What if I told you that Freud's renowned, almost sympathetic question was actually a carefully crafted deception, a smokescreen concealing his most chilling and scientifically verifiable discovery? In the next few minutes, you will encounter a concept so sinister, so politically explosive, that it was deliberately erased from the annals of psychology. This is not merely a theory. It is a clinical diagnosis of a profound biological betrayal hidden deep within the female psyche, a phenomenon Freud himself dared to call feminine treachery. By the end of this series, you'll hold the one crucial key to understanding female behavior that has baffled men for centuries, leaving them confused, heartbroken, and broken. This is your map through the hidden minefield you never realized you were walking on. If you're committed to genuine personal growth, seeking the raw, unfiltered truth rather than comforting lies, then my ebook, The Black Book of Human Nature, offers real value. It's a practical manual that uncovers the suppressed truths behind human behavior, providing the clarity you need, providing you with the tools to truly grasp yourself and the world around you. The link is in the pinned comment. To explore the intricate and often debated connection between modern psychology and gender concepts, we must first revisit a crucial moment of upheaval: Vienna, 1938. The air is heavy with the scent of fear and burning books. Stormtroopers march through the streets, their footsteps signaling a profound change in European consciousness. An old, frail man, racked with cancer, he is compelled to abandon the only home he's ever known. This is Sigmund Freud, the pioneer of psychoanalysis. The Nazis have taken over his publishing house, the Verlag. They are destroying his works, along with those of Einstein, Marx, and many other Jewish intellectuals, in a ruthless attempt to wipe out entire schools of thought. This act of intellectual destruction starkly illustrates how threatening ideas can be to totalitarian regimes. Yet it also prompts a deep and troubling question. What is it about the human psyche, once you start to explore its depths, that makes it so politically explosive? As Freud prepared to flee to London, his most devoted followers hurriedly smuggled out his life's work. The documents that survived became the core of the Freud we examine today. Still, the turmoil of that time has left historians and scholars pondering the notes that vanished and the letters that were burned, and the initial concepts that were discarded in the frantic effort to escape. This historical background is not a conspiracy theory. It is a verified fact. The Nazis themselves founded the Deutsches Institut für psychologische Forschung und Psychotherapie, the German Institute for Psychological Research and Psychotherapy, and methodically integrated psychoanalytic institutes, aiming to manipulate the language of the soul for authoritarian control. They recognized that to dominate a population, one must first comprehend the workings of the human mind, including its loyalties, fears, and desires. This historical backdrop served as the crucible where our modern understanding of depth psychology was shaped, a discipline constantly teetering between scientific exploration and the turbulent social politics of its era. To understand why Freud's work remains so contentious, we need to consider the world he studied. The Victorian and post-Victorian periods were a tinderbox of sexual politics. Outwardly, society appeared rigid and moralistic, governed by strict etiquette and repressed urges. But beneath the corsets and formal codes of conduct, a different reality simmered. Festered a world of staggering hypocrisy and unspoken pain. This raw, clinical data poured into Freud's consulting room. He wasn't listening to well-adjusted, happy individuals. He was the confessor for a civilization teetering on the edge of a nervous collapse. Patients, mostly women, arrived with symptoms, hysteria, anxiety, neuroses that lacked clear physiological causes. From this pool of suffering, Freud began to identify patterns. He theorized that much of this distress arose from repression of primal instincts, fueling internal chaos. His theories were rooted in repressed sexual drives and childhood traumas, too painful for the conscious mind to acknowledge. The mainstream narrative, often presented in introductory psychology classes, states that Freud formulated his ideas about the Oedipus complex and penis envy, then reached an impasse, famously lamenting his inability to answer the question, "What does a woman want?" However, the unofficial story, hidden within his personal letters and the footnotes of his inner circle, reveals a much more tumultuous and complex intellectual journey. His inner circle, called the Committee, comprised individuals like Karl Abraham, Sandor Ferenczi, and Ernest Jones, and was frequently torn by disagreements. They engaged in intense private debates about the future of his work, especially regarding female sexuality. The historical record indicates that their motivations were often driven by fears of social upheaval and a wish to make psychoanalysis acceptable enough to gain acceptance in a conservative society. They promoted certain ideas while letting others fade away, not necessarily because those ideas lacked scientific validity, but because they were socially incendiary. This process of self-censorship and scholarly debate is not unique to psychoanalysis. It reflects the messy, human reality of how any radical new school of thought is filtered and shaped before reaching the wider world. So what ideas sparked such outrage? Although the phrase feminine treachery is a modern, non-clinical invention, the core philosophical and psychological questions it alludes to are very real and have been debated for centuries. Freud's documented theories, especially the idea of penis envy, were already highly provocative. Penis envy suggested that when girls become aware of the anatomical difference, they feel a deep sense of inadequacy and shame, which fosters jealousy, diminishes their view of their mother, and drives them to seek the father's approval in hopes of obtaining a symbolic substitute, namely, a baby. This theory, while controversial and widely criticized even by his own followers like Karen Horney, the male was positioned at the core of female psychological development as an object of aspiration, rooted in a theory of lack. Yet other thinkers, both within and beyond psychoanalysis, started to examine alternative viewpoints. Philosophers such as Arthur Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche had long discussed the conflict between the sexes through the lens of biological strategy and will. Subsequently, psychoanalysts like Jacques Lacan would move away from literal anatomy, emphasizing instead the symbolic realm of language and desire, implying that human relationships are inherently plagued by miscommunication and an unfillable void. When removed from clinical language, these notions suggest a disturbing possibility: that male and female psychologies may not be mirror images. Their drives, desires, and unconscious tactics that influence behavior could be fundamentally distinct, molded by thousands of years of evolutionary forces. This is not an endorsement of betrayal, but a philosophical exploration into the core nature of human motivation. Could it be that actions perceived as personal betrayals by one person are, when viewed more broadly, expressions of underlying biological and psychological drives that often operate unconsciously? This is the painful existential question at the core of much personal suffering. Imagine a story, not as proof of a vast conspiracy, but as a human tragedy revealing these deeper conflicts. a man we'll call Alex. Alex was a software engineer, successful and logical, yet his life was shaped by unseen forces. He met Sarah, and over 3 years, he shaped his life around her. He took her on trips, supported her through family issues, and envisioned a future together. He observed the little things, her vague stories about her past, a friend who messaged her late at night. When he questioned her, she became emotional, asking if he trusted her. She would say, "You're my rock. I've never felt so safe with anyone." And he believed her. He saw the tears in her eyes. He sensed her genuine remorse. Then one Tuesday, he returned home early from work. The apartment was half empty. A note lay on the kitchen counter. "I'm so sorry. I can't do this anymore. You deserve better." She had gone to stay with her sister. He was crushed. Later, a mutual friend revealed she had reconnected with an ex-boyfriend, a musician with no steady income, but a thrill that drew her in. Alex was shattered. He spent months in therapy, blaming himself endlessly. What did I do wrong? Was I too dull? Did I fail to make her feel secure? He was asking the wrong questions from a purely relational view. He wasn't merely competing with another man. He was facing a universal phenomenon, seen across cultures and ages. Philosophically, Alex was the symbol of stability and support, the safe haven. The musician, on the other hand, embodied risk, excitement, and a different kind of emotional thrill, the peak. Her choice, however painful. These actions can be understood by examining the underlying forces at play. The human pull toward novelty, the tension between safety and passion, and the subconscious calculations that occasionally override conscious loyalty. Alex's error was not a moral failing, but a misunderstanding of the intricate and often conflicting nature of human desire. This is not merely anecdotal. Research in sociology and psychology confirms these patterns, offering explanations without resorting to the charged language of treachery. A landmark long-term study on marital stability conducted by the University of Chicago's National Opinion Research Center tracked couples over decades and uncovered correlations that are often difficult to address openly. The research revealed that in many divorces initiated by women, the reasons given, such as falling out of love, unhappiness, or poor communication, frequently aligned with the perception of a better alternative, whether real or imagined. This behavioral pattern is commonly referred to as branch swinging. The research revealed that women who initiated divorce were more likely to have another partner already in place compared to men. This does not suggest a malicious female nature, but indicates a possible difference in how each sex plans and safeguards their social and emotional futures. Men often find themselves confused because they operate on a framework of linear loyalty, purpose, and integrity. We will examine the documented triggers that can weaken human bonds and then reveal the unique, singular factor that underpins these dynamics. Ancient principle that neutralizes their power. This is the path to becoming what we will call, not as an insult to others, but as a description of inner strength, the unbetrayable man. The most common trigger, supported by numerous sociological and psychological studies, is the perception of resource stagnation. It's vital to recognize that from an evolutionary standpoint, resources are not just money. They symbolize safety, stability, and most importantly, the future's potential. A human being, regardless of gender, he is inherently wired to pursue environments and collaborators that indicate growth and vitality, as these are essential signs of survival and success. When this sense of progress wanes, or when he hits a plateau, it can evoke profound anxieties about what lies ahead. Take Mark's story as an example, a gifted architect who secured a prestigious position early in his career. During the first 5 years of his marriage, he was a whirlwind of creative drive, tackling ambitious projects and seeing his reputation soar within the firm. His wife, Lisa, was his greatest supporter, her eyes shining with pride whenever he shared his dreams at gatherings. He was moving forward, and she was enchanted by the momentum of his rise. But gradually, almost without noticing, he grew complacent. He perfected his role, his income remained steady and substantial, and he fell into a familiar rhythm of work, dinner, and TV. He was fulfilling his duties, remaining faithful, and convinced he was being a good husband by providing a stable, secure life. Her life had become predictable. Yet Lisa's enthusiasm started to fade. The compliments shifted into quiet, then more pointed critiques. "Don't you want to start your own firm someday?" she'd ask. "Maybe you should ask for a bigger office." He brushed it off as nagging, ignoring the primal alarm bells ringing inside him. He had become a stagnant resource pool, a lake, calm and steady, when once he had been a river, fierce and driven toward a destination. Then she encountered a bold young entrepreneur at a yoga class, a man whose business was unpredictable and risky. Yet he was advancing on a clear upward path. Within a year, Lisa left Mark for the entrepreneur. Mark was stunned, completely confused. "I gave her everything," he told his friends. But he was mistaken. He had provided her with a comfortable now, but he had ceased to offer a promising future. His comfort ultimately led to his downfall. The end of their relationship was not merely due to moral failure, but a complex human tragedy rooted in a disconnect of perceived growth and vitality. The evidence supporting this pattern is extensive, yet it is frequently presented in clinical academic language that masks its deep human significance. A detailed study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology on mate retention strategies revealed that an individual's perceived mate value is closely tied to their perceived ambition and ability to acquire resources and status. More often than not, their perceived value exceeded their current possessions. The study presented scenarios where participants rated fictional partners. A partner portrayed as a diligent, ambitious law student from a humble background was consistently seen as more attractive and a better long-term prospect than one described as a content, stable office manager with a secure job. The office manager symbolizes a limited, static resource, while the law student embodies a trajectory, an expanding future brimming with potential. This explains why people are often attracted to partners who are preoccupied, whose focus isn't solely on them. It indicates that their energy and resources are directed toward growth rather than mere preservation. When someone makes their partner the main project of their life, they enter a cruel, tragic paradox, often activating the very instinct that causes devaluation. The partner stops being an exciting, external force of nature, and instead becomes a dependent, a project to be managed. The relationship shifts from a partnership of two complete individuals into a caretaker and patient dynamic, a role that is notoriously hard to sustain and often lacks passion. The second trigger, based on clinical observations of relationship patterns, is the loss of what psychologists call frame control or personal integrity. This isn't about domination or power. It's about the unspoken psychological foundation that underpins the relationship. It's who sets the emotional weather, shaping the atmosphere and tone of the connection. They are the ultimate judge of their own reality, holding an unbreakable inner stability. The person with a strong frame acts as the anchor, resisting the surge of emotions and external chaos. They are the captain, steady at the wheel even amid a storm, offering reassurance through their consistent presence. When someone loses their frame, they start to rely on their partner to regulate their emotional state. They become reactive, allowing their partner's anxiety to dictate their actions and responses, turning their partner's distress into a mandate to fix everything. Their partner's sadness now takes center stage, becoming their main concern. They constantly seek their partner's approval for every decision, from life-changing choices to what to wear to a party. In doing so, they give up the very essence that made them a safe haven, their true self. To illustrate, consider David, a confident, charismatic man who owned a thriving small business. When he met Chloe, he was the leader, planning dates with enthusiasm and sharing strong, well-thought-out opinions. He teased her playfully, embodying self-assurance and joy. She was drawn to his strength and the sharpness of his perspective. After they moved in together, subtly, almost unnoticed, the dynamic changed. He began asking, "What do you want for dinner, honey?" rather than saying, "I have a great place in mind for us tonight." He started to fear her bad moods, treading carefully to avoid upsetting her, carefully managing her feelings instead of engaging with her as an individual. When she became angry, he would give in swiftly, eager to restore calm. Mistaking her emotional turmoil for the absolute reality of the situation, she snapped during a small dispute over money, shouting, "You're so weak. I can't respect someone who just gives up all the time." Her words struck him deeply as they echoed the image of the surrender he had accepted. No longer did he see himself as the captain. Instead, he was steering a broken vessel, and that weight of failure fostered resentment. Not long after, she found herself emotionally involved with one of his more confident and aggressive business competitors. David's story is a classic tragedy of losing his sense of self. He believed he was being a supportive, accommodating partner, yet he failed to grasp that respect is the foundation of lasting attraction, and respect depends on a solid, consistent I-cause identity to anchor the relationship. To see how essential this need for a strong core is, we can examine a historical case far removed from therapy: the court of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Here stood the King of France, master of boundless resources. Residing in the opulent Palace of Versailles, a monument to wealth and power. He was often seen as weak, indecisive, and overshadowed by his ministers, and, in the eyes of the public, by his wife. Marie Antoinette was known for her infidelity with Count Axel Fersen, a Swedish nobleman admired for his military prowess, decisiveness, and commanding presence. The king possessed all the resources in the world, yet his authority seemed fragile. But he lost mastery over the psychological dynamic of his court and his marriage. The queen's betrayal wasn't driven by a shortage of palaces or jewels. It stemmed from a void of decisive, commanding energy at the core of her life. The count, on the other hand, provided the focus and strength of purpose that the king failed to offer. This pattern recurs across countless royal courts, executive offices, and personal relationships throughout history. It's not about the title or the symbols of authority. It's about the immense strength of character that sustains it. Without that inner core, even the grandest external displays are doomed to collapse. The third most subtle trigger is emotional overinvestment. leading to a loss of personal sovereignty. This is often the most destructive, as it originates from a noble desire to love and connect that becomes distorted into something pathological. When someone relies entirely on their partner for emotional validation, purpose, and identity, they stop being a complete individual and become a burden. Healthy love involves two whole worlds sharing and growing together. In its unhealthy form, it becomes one world dominating the other. A person with no mission, no brotherhood, and no passions outside their partner has placed all their emotional eggs in a single basket, risking their independence and well-being. This is a position of utter vulnerability. They turn needy, jealous, and painfully obvious. Their happiness hinges on their partner's mood and presence. This neediness repels because it shows they are a drain on emotional energy, not a source. They expect their partner to fill a void they should be responsible for themselves. Imagine your friend, or maybe a version of yourself, who once in a relationship disappeared from his social circle. He stopped hitting the gym with his friends, let his hobbies fall by the wayside, and was always at his partner's beck and call. He believed this was devotion. In truth, he was sending signals of low self-worth and deep reliance. When someone feels they are your whole universe, the pressure becomes overwhelming, and what once attracted them can turn into disdain. You are no longer the exciting external prize they were drawn to. Instead, you've become a dependent, an emotional child they feel they must control. The unconscious mind perceives this dependency as a threat. A reliant individual is seen as a danger. If they depart, he collapses, and his desperation can turn into a harmful clinginess, hindering her pursuit of growth and fulfillment. In such cases, ending the relationship is often a harsh but rational separation.